Hi folks, we're going to be looking at today on Motorcycle Enquiries, and we are going to be considering whether or not natural law or situation ethics can give us a good idea as to what's the best thing to do under the circumstances, whether sanctity of life has any context in modern medicine, whether an individual's autonomy is the only thing that matters, and also whether there is actually any significant difference between intervention and non-intervention in a medical sense. Okay, for euthanasia we need to consider natural law and situation ethics. Good place to start is autonomy. Do we have autonomy from a factual perspective? You could argue yes, we're the only ones who are capable of making our rational decisions because our life is our own, but on the other hand, sometimes other people have to make decisions for us. They have their own perspectives, for example doctors, and we're not always autonomous. We might need people to make decisions for us if we lose our faculties. A lot of traffic today. Oh yeah. Okay, looks like there's a gap coming up. That's all. So, should a person always have full autonomy on that basis? Well, you could say yes, our life is our life, and therefore we are the only ones who have a right to decide how it should be lived. But on the other hand, our decisions affect others, and on the basis that our decisions affect others and others might have to step in, maybe a person shouldn't always be considered to be completely autonomous. So let's consider sanctity of life then. Is life sacred? You could argue yes. You could risk undermining the value of human life if you don't consider life to be sacred. Life is special and deserves to be treated as such. There's a lot of examples for this and a lot of evidence, even from a common sense perspective. There's also biblical precedent. God decides life and death. That's a classic part of natural law, for example. However, this assumes Christianity applies to all people across the world. Doesn't necessarily. Also, medical advances allow us to accurately predict if treatment is worth doing or not nowadays, something that wasn't around back when the Bible was being written. Also, the sanctity of life risks being overly legalistic, so rather than accepting the importance of the quality of life, could allow unnecessary suffering. And it does clash with autonomy and a sense of control over our own situation. Oh, not really sure. Can I get back? Maybe not. Anyway, there's also the slippery slope argument. There's a risk of people being coerced into euthanasia, but Peter Singer responded to this by suggesting that of 48,000 Dutch end-of-life situations, so in the Netherlands, only 2 were potentially mistreatments of people's lives, but that could just be poor documentation of the event. So generally, actually, people don't start killing people off with euthanasia, which is, good news, all things considered, but suggests that maybe we should consider it as a moral option. There's also the question of acts and omissions. So what's the difference between acting to kill someone off or omitting to provide treatment? Well, the Hippocratic Oath, which is the oath that doctors always used to have to consider, they're not allowed to kill even if a patient wishes them to do so. There's a new wind farm over there. But you can stop treating people if it seems pointless. So on the one hand, suggests that there is a difference in acts and omissions, but there are some suggestions that there is no difference, really, between acts and omissions. Both are equally morally bad. In some ways, omissions can be worse if you let someone suffer in order to die, rather than acting to kill them off. And Jonathan Glover also suggests that acts and omissions are not that simple, because they are influenced by ordinary and extraordinary means. For example, is medicine risky? Are you taking away food and water, which is ordinary? So what is basic, what is risky? So overall, natural law has got some strengths over situation ethics, suggests that there's an intrinsic value to life. Double effect is sensibly flexible when there's no prospect of saving a life, prevents humans from abusing their power and acting like God. But there are weaknesses. Its religious foundations can't be proven. They can lead to suffering for those in pain, and it ignores the quality of life issue. Situation ethics has got some strengths too. It's flexible to individual situations. Agape, if applied correctly, should give the best outcome as well. And it allows for a consideration of quality of life. Also, off he goes there. And but also there are problems. Agape is vague. There are issues around predicting the future, and there's also the big question of who is it most loving to? Is it being done for us or for the person who is suffering? All these need to be considered.